This is a project that is very recent because it took place in April, because the forum that I have just showed you has now been in place for over a year and a half. And you can see here that there's an image of a pose with an elevator. And what does this mean? I'm going to go ahead a few slides. There's an image which is a bit too heavy. There you go. You can understand a bit better, maybe. Nope, I want to go back. There are two buildings to be able to access the National Library of France. There is the recent one, which is a huge building next to the Seine River, which was built 10 years ago, which is called the Library of France Mitterrand. And then you have a historical building that has been existing for different centuries, which is surrounded by the Rue Richelieu and many other areas of Paris, which is right next to the Royal Palace. So it's not a homogeneous building, it's a patchwork of different types of architecture and buildings that are classified and protected. And one has to change the elevators and the steps and the stairs and insert all kinds of safety measures. So an architect is going to work on this project for 10 years. Why 10 years? Because for 10 years this library cannot close, so it has to stay open, because there's an obligation by the institutions not to close the library, the public library. So starting from one of the buildings, up until 2013, there's going to be works here and renovations going on. And in 2013, the reading rooms that are placed on that side are going to be provisionally and temporarily moved to this side, and they're going to start the works on the other side in the northern part. So within the next 10 years, the library is going to open totally refurbished and totally renovated without having ever shut down. The signalage has to stay on for at least 5 years, and then in 10 years' time it's going to be a permanent descriptive signal. Going back. So these are the works. So we've intervened on the outside, on the exteriors, because we wanted the readers to understand that the entrance that had existed for over 100 years and then now for the next 5 years is going to be on the other side of the building. So I used a character which I designed called the Renaissance, and this font at the end of the conference you're going to talk, and if you're interested to know why I decided to draw this font. The typographic creation of this font was worked after and sought after the proportions. My proposal was that the descriptive signs were to be on two plans with directional signs and an identification that had a photographic report, and I asked Murat to do this, so take pictures on all the works that were going to take place, and permitted the removal of these reading rooms without closing down the library. It's as if we showed and we created a hole while the works were going on, and people could actually live and see what was going on while we were moving, as we were manipulating very precious objects to be able to preserve them and transmit them and stock them for the public. There's a very important thing to know, that in this library there are books, but there's also many other things. There's pieces of coins, there are theater costumes, there are globes, there are stamps, lithographies, and manuscripts. So there's a great variety of things that need to be preserved. Another principle is to always have the picture behind, and on the front of the picture there's a supportive descriptive information that tells you that everything is in movement. So very simple. This I've showed you before, so you've understood that this is where we used to enter from before, and now we're going to enter on the other side of the building. These images were constructed because I'm going to show you the real images later on. One of the obvious problems when we have to intervene on such a building is that if we try to to camouflage and to integrate ourselves perfectly with the building, we can't really understand that there's a change taking place. So we have to tell people and inform people that there is change going on. So there's undergoing change. So it seemed kitsch to want to imitate the architecture, and also because in public spaces there's a lot of signs and signposts which are already pre-existent, so they would be competitive with our signs and what I wanted to express, because there's so many interventions to do on a road of Paris, so it's very difficult to control things. I'll give you an example. For example, when we started to put down all the signals, we received an official letter saying that we had the interdiction to put down our signalage. And so obviously I said I hadn't received any letter. These are the technical layouts and renderings. It shows you the heights and to start understanding how much it's going to cost. I asked the designer that worked with me in the atelier to see exactly how it was going to be designed and laid, and because it had to be laid extremely precisely, because since it was going to be put on a historical building, we only had the right to perform a few holes in the building itself. So we had to be extremely precise in measurements and the way that we were going to fix all the screws in the building, because when you do something such as this, you also have to guarantee the maintenance of it, and it has to hold up and keep up for 5 years. There are different applications done on smaller objects, and not outside of the building but inside the building, as well on different floors, new reading rooms. You can see the different types of interventions that were done inside the building. So somebody walks in to the building, he needs a card that has a number to be able to access the reading room, because it's a very precious area and place. Then he goes to the welcome reception, and then he's given an area where he can work, and he has a number which corresponds to his card. And here you have the different kinds of interventions outside and inside the building that were done. So PAG, PA0, PA01. You can see that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. This is also, it's part of the renderings in the dossier, to be able to control all of this. We had to ask, obviously, the council to validate. We had to give exactly everything and all the details of the intervention. You're probably very familiar with this kind of bureaucracy needed for interventions of renovations, and now a small visit of the project done. We can see that there are two different pictures, because there's already, so that it takes on the lateral road, but it also moves you and directs you to the entrance. You can see a curator of the collection, cartography. This is seen from the bottom upwards. There's a different little slope because that part with the picture is exactly perfectly vertical and the transparent part is slightly slanted so that the water can drain. You can see it here. You can see it's slightly slanted. Every angle of the building has a different intervention, so it needed a specific object. So since this angle is rounded, it was impossible to do an object that had two sides like an open book. It's not done on purpose that the panels underneath ours were green. It just happened. It was pure luck. At one point, turning around, there are evidences that we tend to not see anymore and point out. So you find out and you just, when it's done. This is once you enter the prefabricated building. We find the same graphic principles as before. This is a staircase. Obviously, what is interesting about this slide, even if you can't really understand what's going on, is that there's a woman that is a curator of the stamp department of the museum, and there's a picture of a woman, and it's some kind of a form of vanity. This woman that is holding, you can't really see it, but I can assure you that there is. And concentrate. She's very sweet and looks at this other woman, which is my wife, actually. But anyways, don't worry about it. Inside the building, what is interesting to me, but I think you're probably going to guess, but from an aesthetic point of view, we are integrated without being integrated in this building. I don't really know how to develop or explain it. So the elements that signal were inserted in a way that was not, it's a contrast with the building. But at the same time, how can I really explain this? There's a game on materials, colors, and forms that detach themselves from the elements of the building without really doing so. And at the same time, there's a game of reflections and overlappings of different materials next to objects that were pre-existing. So there are, everything is composite and put together. So it's a combined aesthetic. This is a call for a tour of this museum.